Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling review show with myself and Sloth. A 3-1 loss to Manchester City, probably what most expected, but we actually gave ourselves a pretty good account, and there was a glimmer of hope after we were winning 1-0 at half-time, but, City are City, and, what they did in the second half was pretty much expected, but we're going to break down why it kind of frustrated us in the manner in what we conceded the goals and what pivotal moments in the match kind of changed the course of the game, because there were a couple, and up until the 70th minute, we were doing pretty strong. So, yeah, we're going to get into that. If you do enjoy, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, as that massively helps us out. And yeah, Sloth, let's break it down. Man City at home, like we were saying in the preview, it's going to be a pretty tough game, but also a game that we could have potentially got something from if we basically played out of our skin and rode our luck, but it wasn't to be. But with the starting lineup, what was your thoughts on that? Obviously, Kudus on the bench. Maybe some people were saying whether he was going to start. Paqueta came in for Ben Rama out on the left-hand side, with Souček coming back into the midfield three. How did you feel about that lineup? Were you surprised at all to see Paqueta kind of pushed wide?
Yeah, I think we both kind of spoke about how that we expected Ben Rama to really start there, or not really Paqueta to start out wide. But to be honest, I think, as with every game this season, he was great. And if I'm Ben Rama, I'm kind of, I'm sweating under the collar a little bit, because we'll get onto him later. But I think Paqueta just, once again, was really our best player. Apart from perhaps one who we didn't see for the full 90 minutes, and I think a good goalkeeping performance more than not. But I think Paqueta was again our standout player.
Yeah, I'm getting to the point now where Paqueta's becoming that standout player for us a lot of the time. It was Rice before that, where it was kind of like every game Rice was the best player. Now Paqueta's kind of taken up that role, and wherever he's playing on the pitch, it just seems like he's the best player. It really just, his quality is very apparent. Not to say we didn't play well and other players didn't play well, but Paqueta's he just seems like that slight step above from the rest.
I think before we get into it as well, what did you make of his dalliance with Pep before the start?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to feel about that, really. It kind of, it's probably something he shouldn't have done before the match like that, but I don't know. There isn't really much context around it other than that clip where he kind of runs over and says hello or whatever. But they've moved on from Paqueta maybe now. They brought in Nunes. That ship's probably sailed unless something comes back up. But yeah, I think it wasn't anything on Paqueta's end. It didn't affect his performance at all. He still gave his absolute best account for West Ham. It didn't seem like anything else. So didn't really have too much of an issue with it. But what about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit disappointing to see before a game. But if he played really poorly, I think I'd have been like, obviously there would have been a lot more anger towards it. But as I said, he was kind of our standout performer. So I think it was kind of, it maybe fanboyism or something, or just kind of, give him props where it's due, because let's face it, he is the best manager in the world. And he's probably just gone over to say, all right. So yeah, I'm kind of not going to read too much into it. I do think there's a strong possibility that they come in for him next summer, just because I can see them getting rid of one of Bernardo Silva or whoever it may be and looking to bring him in. But I'm not going to go all conspiracy theorist on it and say too much. But yeah, it was, I think, again, it didn't do anything for me. I've seen a few comments and things about it online, that's supposed twerking of it, but I'm not really bothered. I think most players, they want to go and meet Pep, don't they? I think if anyone who's got an interest in football, they want that. So I'm not too fussed.
Yeah, so as we kind of went through the first half, maybe open 20, 25 minutes, obviously, as expected, City had a lot of the ball. We caused a couple of issues when we actually did get the ball. I thought we were playing really well in possession at times. I thought Paqueta, Ward-Prowse, Emerson really linking up well on the left-hand side. And obviously our set pieces were looking very dangerous. We came close from that corner that, you know, Bowen actually took in the end. It weren't even Ward-Prowse. And then, you know, City also posed their kind of threats. Haaland somehow missing that back post, kind of empty net before the Aged one. But what did you make of the overall pattern, you know, before we get into the first goal of the game? Because it felt like the type of game it was going to be. And it felt like, you know, what we were trying to do was keep them, you know, pretty congested in the middle, force them wide. But I'll get onto that in a second, why I think that was kind of our downfall in the end with Doku. But how did you feel like our approach was in that kind of opening 20-25 minutes?
I think it was obviously a very similar approach in terms of how we took on Brighton. And we were willing to sit back and soak up pressure and try and get those outlets in Paqueta and Bowen and Antonio in attack. And look, I think as much as we can kind of say we played well, and you know, I'm fairly happy with the performance and the elements of the performance, and the result as a whole I think is not one that I'm happy about, because obviously we dropped points, but I do think the final result was quite kind on us, and I know it's not one that we deserve to lose by a large margin, but I do think if we come up against a clinical, which is very strange to say, Haaland, that we probably lose that by 5. But I do kind of think we got a bit lucky there. I think if he scores any of those chances in the first sort of 20 minutes or so, like that back post header you mentioned, we could be looking at a very different scoreline. And I think
with City, when you play City, it's pretty inevitable how you can approach the game. Either you try and match them if you're someone like an Arsenal or Liverpool, which, you know, sometimes gets success, sometimes doesn't, or you try and do what we've done, where you ride your luck, you hope your goalie has a worldie, and you hope you're clinical when you get the chances. And in the first half, that's how the pattern kind of played out. With the latter, I feel like we frustrated them quite a lot, even though they did have a few really good chances. Obviously, the kind of quadruple save-ish from Areola and Souček from the corner, where it was just absolute mayhem. And then obviously the Haaland chance at the back post after that. But other than that, really, it wasn't. I didn't feel too threatened. I don't know how to kind of describe it. Obviously, Man City have the quality to do what they did, but we were nullifying them quite well in central areas. You know, we were forcing them wide. When they came out to, you know, with Emerson and Paqueta on that side, they didn't really have much of an answer to that. The success they were getting was all coming through Doku on that other side, and you know, it's a big task, not only for any fullback really, because Doku's going to absolutely tear apart a lot of fullbacks. And you know, it's a really tough challenge for Bowen and Kufal, because you're demanded to do the defensive work 100% of the time. You're also then demanded to go up the other end and provide, which we did. Bowen won the ball back from Doku, actually, kind of in the 35th minute or so. Gave it to Kufal down the right-hand side. You know, he got forwards after a lot of defending to do. And we saw a ball from Kufal that we probably would have seen 2 or 3 years ago. It was an absolutely brilliant pass. And we've seen something from Ward-Prowse again, which I don't think many West Ham fans, including myself, expected to see, which is a number 8 Ward-Prowse running into the box. He did it against Brighton and got a goal from it. He's done it again against Man City and got a goal from it. And it was a really good header, a really, really good header, because he had to go back across Ederson. He had a bit of time to think about it. And yeah, it was just a really good finish, and it put us 1-0 up. And on the balance of play, how were you feeling? Because at that point, it felt like Moyes was, you know, rubbing his hands together. The plan was slightly working.
I mean, I think it's very difficult to look at it and say, you know, I was confident, because I think it was very much a case of we've gone ahead and immediately kind of go into panic mode, where you're just kind of thinking, oh God, we've got 60 odd minutes left and we're probably going to, you know, be under the cosh. And look, let's face it, with City, you know what's going to happen. You know that they're going to get chances. So while I thought, you know, that's a great passage of play and that's the sort of thing that we needed to do, I think Bowen doubling up on Doku was really one of the key things that we needed, and that's how we got the goal. But When you are that quick, it's very hard to double up on you. I don't care how quick your fullback is, or you could be moderately quick, or you could be quick for the standard of the league. When someone is blisteringly fast like that, it doesn't matter. Like, they're just going to knock it past you. And if you're even on the half turn, if you're on 1 foot, you can't get that start that you need. So I think, while I was sort of obviously very happy we scored, and I thought it could be a proper West Ham, snatch and grab, there is that element of just the voice in your back of your head going, calm down, come on, it's Pep, it's Haaland, and they have so much strength in depth. It's obscene.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. I was sat there, we got to half time 1-0, and you're sat there thinking, there's going to be chances for Man City. We are going to probably have to score again and be clinical in a moment in the match where it's going to be crucial to do so. And I think we didn't do that. But I think in that first half, what we saw, and especially until Alvarez came off, was the importance of Alvarez, and how much more solid we are, not only defensively, but actually on the ball. That's what surprised me the most with Alvarez, because he's kind of come into the Premier League, a lot of question marks about whether he's good enough on the ball from West Ham fans, which I'm not sure why, because we'd said in our kind of breakdown on Alvarez how, he is very good on the ball and comfortable in possession. But I've been surprised at how good, because he's really taken to it well, and he just brings that kind of calmness, that aura, and he helps us play between the lines, and it allows Paqueta to roam, who was playing obviously inverted left, where he had that kind of license to pick up the pockets against a Man City team that do overcommit. But for me, it was Alvarez. He was the key to why Man City were probably trying to go wide to Doku a lot, just because of how much we were kind of shutting out that midfield with Souček and Alvarez in there alongside Ward-Prowse slightly further forward. So it was working well, man. I think going into the second half, we were hoping for a set piece or something to break for us. And 48 seconds, something like that, just no one really in the stands back from half time, they'd scored, they'd equalised, and it was a well worked goal, but at the same time really poor defensively. It just looked like we just weren't alive, and against one of the teams where you just have to be alive for as soon as that whistle goes.
Yeah, again, it was one of those things where we just mentioned about Bowen doubling up, and it seemed like neither of them really committed to a challenge. Soufal just backed off, and Bowen just couldn't catch him.
Yeah.
And Doku made great use of the space. He moved into it and backed, and he really backed Soufal into a corner which he shouldn't have been in. It was a great finish, and when I don't know how many times I have to say it, pace just is unplayable against if you are quick enough, and he is that. One of my biggest gripes, and I'm sure it would be Moyes' biggest gripe, is when you score from a kickoff, or like when an opponent does that, and it's just so disappointing, because you'd have been in there giving your team talk, and everyone will have come out and you're gone, oh God, straight away.
The worst part is, Sloth, it was our kickoff.
Yeah, it's just needless. And I think we were talking about how good on the ball Alvarez is, and it was really something that Mike and I focused on and said, I don't really know where this has come from, where this myth has come from, but I think unfortunately we kind of saw the opposite end of that, and there is still a bit of discomfort in some elements of the squad on the ball and in possession. I don't know if they just feel like when they come up against a City, they feel the need to try and move the ball on as quickly as they can. But for 48 seconds, we could have played keep ball. Really, yeah. It's something that you would have thought was to say, go into the half, settle yourself down, keep possession, and if you have to concede a throw in up the pitch or something, you clear the ball, you do it in their half.
Yeah.
But just to crumble like that was a big disappointment.
Yeah, it was. And I think in the first half, although Haaland had a couple of big chances, we even forgot to say the one that Aguerd cleared off the line, another massive chance they had in the first half, but he kind of came alive straight away in the second half. And in the build up to their goal, he kind of pulls off, comes short, plays a one-touch pass, creates the space in behind, and then Doku picks up the ball wide. And one thing I've noticed with us is I think Moyes is pretty happy to send the ball out wide, and he kind of backs us to defend those areas. When you have someone like Doku, very difficult to do that, especially when you've got Bowen, who, like you mentioned, is doing both defensive and offensive responsibilities, and it's a tough job. Let alone, having to be the one to try and double up with Kufal, because, to be honest, Kufal just couldn't deal with Doku one-on-one. And as I said before, I'm not putting that on Kufal, because not many right backs are going to be able to deal with him when he's playing like that at all. Especially at Kufal's age with the pace advantage. It's a really tough task. So for me, it's a very good goal from Doku. It's a very well worked goal from City, but from our point of view, really frustrating that it happened so early, and it was preventable in the build up, because we did have possession from kickoff and we gave it back to him straight away, and we weren't switched on to the second phase of play. So that's what frustrated me. But at that point, we were still in it. We were still in a game. It was 1-1. Although it felt like momentum was swinging straight away, we still had, our game plan, and they were still leaving gaps, even though they were creating a lot of chances and, finding pockets of space. There was still that space for us to exploit, and we came very, very close at 1-1. Other than them hitting the crossbar, which we're not even going to talk about from a free kick, but Antonio Paqueta picked up the ball in a pocket, played an absolutely fantastic through ball to Antonio, who kind of went through one-on-one, couldn't make the most of it, kind of fumbled it a little bit, probably should have done better. And, at that point, we could have restored our lead and it could have been 2-1. How did you assess that chance for Antonio and what he was actually bringing to that team? Because I actually thought he had a really, really good game other than that moment.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was almost a bit of deer in the headlights. He just looked like he was kind of caught in two minds, really, about what to do. And, the ball from Paqueta is fantastic. But I kind of tweeted out earlier that I'm a little bit worried about Antonio in terms of, not his ability, because he's been fantastic for us this season. And he's been playing that role really, really well, but obviously he went off, and I do kind of think around the 55th minute or so, he looked like he was really breathing out his arse. He looked knackered, and I just kind of I don't know if that maybe played a part in that chance, but I think he just looked quite tired. And yeah, my big worry is going forward, if he is injured at any point before January, then we are left without that focal point that we know we rely on so heavily.
Yeah, I think what else was, also was telling that we had Danny Ings on the bench, and at that point when Antonio had to come on, Moyes decided to put Bowen up top and bring Kudus out to the right. So I think that's where the game changed. Not only the Antonio substitution, because I think that was a big part, especially as what you were saying. Antonio has been really good this season in terms of that system and what he's actually bringing. And against Man City, he did really well, to be honest, with, not only offensively, but defensively. He was dropping into those pockets, and, it looked like he was actually involved a lot more. So when he came off, it was obviously a big blow. And then the plan was to bring off Souček for Ben Rama at that point. Obviously, Kudus came on for Antonio. That was the point. But then Alvarez went down. It's now come out, basically saying that he wasn't injured. It was mainly fatigue, and it looked like he was cramping up. And, he only just got back from Mexico. So then Souček had to drop him back into that role and try and be the anchor that Alvarez was being. And it just did not work. It just really took away that anchor that we had, and the gaps started to appear. Our confidence kind of went down at that point. Ben Rama just wasn't impacting the game. Same with Kudus, to be honest, in the early phases of him coming on. And we were just dropping a little bit deeper, and we weren't able to retain the ball as well as we were, and we weren't really offering a threat anymore, other than the set piece, which almost paid off with Zuma from the header with an excellent save from Edison. But it felt like Man City were trying to pull it a bit more with the strings, and they did get that second goal. But again, a really, really frustrating way to concede. I think it was Alvarez that played a little chip ball over the top. And who do you blame for this goal, other than kind of the initial phase, for the sole purpose of again missing the flight of the ball and Areola kind of faffing about with it and not really being just not very authoritative in that position, and Bernardo Silva kind of got in and chipped it over him. So where's the error lie there, Sloth? Who do you look at and say that could have been prevented?
I mean, there's multiple errors in there. Souček doesn't do enough to close him down. Yeah. He kind of sits back, and this is my worry about Souček is that I think West Ham fans were kind of duped into thinking that Alvarez was going to be another Souček to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And when Alvarez went off, Souček was just left in not doing what Alvarez was doing. We've kind of seen people say that they think Souček could be a centre back and like drop into that position maybe later on. And I just don't think he has the defensive awareness to do that. He will throw himself at everything if it's in the air, and there's no way that ball over is beating Souček.
Yeah.
But it's just a case of he doesn't have the decision making to step up or to challenge someone, even if it's just, closing them down a little bit. I don't think he has that in his locker. So I do think he could close down, he could pressure Silva, but he didn't. And I don't know what Aguerd is doing there. It's a terrible leap. I watched him for years in France, and I think he's made more errors in his time at West Ham than across the entire years that I watched him in Ligue 1. It's been really frustrating because this is a guy who was Moyes' top target in terms of being a centre back, and it just seems like he's a little bit weak in the air, and for a guy who is built. Like, he's a strong guy and he's quick and he has got a good leap, it shouldn't be happening. I don't know if him and Areola just need to really kind of, have a talk and really figure out what's going on there. If someone needs to really shout at someone and say, you need to listen to me, which in my opinion should be the keeper's job. But that shouldn't happen. You should not be able to play a little dink ball over the top that beats centre back, but then also leaves your keeper in two minds. And I do think Aguerd is to blame. I think blaming Areola's hard. However, it's the most criticised position because it does lead to a goal. And if he comes through and he has to clean out Aguerd, or if he catches the ball, then ultimately, it's not a huge run for him to do so. So I do think that those two are the main culprits. It's very hard for me to be too critical of Areola, because I do think that he made multiple fantastic saves yesterday. And I saw someone saying that they didn't think he made any saves that Fabianski couldn't have. I don't know how much I buy that. With all due respect to Fabianski, I just don't think he makes a number of those saves. And I don't think he makes a number of saves against Brighton. But it's just, I feel like people really wanted someone to zoom in on there and to really pick. And it is a collaboration of just really, really poor errors. It's schoolboy, really.
It really is, and it's just so frustrating because that is a preventable goal. That really is. I think the first one, again, is still preventable that they scored, just not switched on early, but it was still quite a nice move from City. This one really wasn't. It was kind of a hopeful lob over out from Alvarez, and Aguerd just mistimed it. It was really strange because Aguerd is he's such a frustrating player for me, because even like you said before, he's a very good centre back, and he's already shown throughout his time at West Ham that he has the fundamentals to be an excellent player for us. but he's just got to cut out the mistakes. You can't keep making the mistakes that he's making. And, bringing in someone like Mavropanos now, it's gonna, I'm hoping, push him into better performances, because there's no way he can kind of keep making these same errors, and Moyes isn't going to maybe think about changing that back line. And yes, Areola probably should have done better after the ball dropped down to Bernardo, but it just shouldn't have fell there in the first place. And yeah, that second goal was a killer. It kind of killed the atmosphere a little bit. It kind of was expected that Man City were going to score anyway, so Man City could then just play a little bit more keep ball, relax a little bit more on the ball. And as we tried to push out, the inevitable was always going to happen. We were leaving gaps. We were overcompensating with our centre backs for the midfield just being wide open. And then City obviously got their third goal through Erling Haaland, who could have had 3 or 4 goals, to be honest. I think Areola prevented a lot of those, and obviously Haaland missed a couple himself. But it was just a frustrating one. And that one I'm not as mad at, because it's just us trying to go for the game, and we're absolutely shattered, and the gaps have opened, and Man City are going to score.
I think one of my disappointments was kind of that we actually didn't go for the 5 at the back. I know Kehrer came on late on, but I would have actually just brought Kehrer on and said double up on Doku. I don't care what you do, just try and double up on him. And it's all kind of ifs and buts, but I do think that having a Mavropanos or a Kehrer, it gives you that ability to play the 3 at the back, and you don't have to rely on Souček to be making those decisions, which we know isn't his strong suit. In terms of Haaland, that third goal, I don't know how you defend against Haaland, to be honest.
It's tough.
Because you can bully him and you can try and keep him quiet physically. However, if he gets a yard of space, he's got so much pace. I mean, he made Aguerd look not slow, but he just had a beating of him pace-wise. And, when someone is that tall, that strong, and that quick, it's all hands on deck. Yeah. And like we said, he wasn't his usual self in front of goal. And I think we were lucky he only got 1 yesterday. But I can't complain too much about the third. I think it was coming. And as you say, we at least tried to push for the equaliser. And if it was a case of we were just sitting back and trying to soak up the pressure to catch them on the break, or being overly negative, then I'd have been a bit frustrated. But I don't feel like we did that. I think we had a game plan. It just went a bit awry, and it kind of fell apart when Alvarez went off.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And, as we said, against a team like City, you have to take your chances, number one, and you have to get a bit of luck, number two. And, we rode our luck at times, but we weren't clinical enough when we needed to be. And, it's just one of them games. We've had a really good start to the season. So this one, I'm not even that bothered about, because all I wanted to see was us perform a little bit and show, real glimpses of what's to come. And I thought this was a very decent performance overall, considering playing, Man City. They're going to do this to a lot of teams. I don't think we can take too much discredit from it. And the only issues I have with it is, I'm going to talk about the subs, because I think Benrahma and Kudus, I'm going to say both, weren't good enough when they came on. Kudus, I'll start with. I don't think he was trying hard enough. I think we had a lot more. He wasn't tracking back much at all. It kind of left us a lot more exposed on the right, and he wasn't really good enough when he got the ball. And Benrahma, just another one that's just continuing. It's just getting more frustrating now. Some people won't like me saying it, but I just don't think he's good enough. I just don't think he's good enough anymore. I don't think he's consistent enough. And when you look at the pace that we don't have a lot of the time, and how much are we crying out for a left winger like Doku in our team? I mean, it would be absolutely brilliant to have someone, not even just the quality of him, but just to have someone with pace and dribbling that he can do, and is a bit more clinical. Because you look at someone like Benrahma, in that second half, he got into similar positions twice. I think one time he went down onto his left foot and just put a cross straight into the keeper. The other time he just got ushered out of play for a goal kick. So it's frustrating. And then you've obviously got people like Pablo Fornals not even making an appearance. You've got Cornet, who wasn't even on the bench. You've then got Danny Ings coming on for however long he got on, that you just know isn't going to make a difference. So that's where I have concerns about this season. It's the kind of secondary artillery we have when other players fall out and when other players get injured.
I think it was, incredibly frustrating, particularly with Benrahma. I kind of said that in January we really need to be looking at a new winger. He's a very talented footballer. However, the problem is his consistency. I think if you play him in the Europa League, he's going to win you games, because he can be a nightmare to play against. And if he's in the rotation, then your chances are you're going to get the best out of him, because he will try and come on and impress. However, he doesn't have the pace to impact games. His decision making is incredibly frustrating, and his finishing doesn't look, where his kind of goals that we saw at Brentford, the finishing that he was showing there has gone. I don't know. He doesn't look willing to take, not willing to not take shots, but he just kind of doesn't even look half the player he was when he was at Brentford. Yeah. And it might sound harsh, but I do just think, he doesn't get into any of the other sides chasing top 8. And I think he gets onto their bench, but very little.
I just don't think he's a winger. I don't know. Maybe playing as a 10. I think it's probably his best position.
I think him off a striker or kind of in the middle is probably the best, because he doesn't have to run as much. He doesn't have to.
Number 10. Number 10 is his best position.
Yeah, and he can follow up. Because he is a clever player, but it's just, do I want us to sell Fornals for him to stay? No, I would much rather keep Fornals. And I don't think that we're getting the best out of Benrahma. If there's any chance that we could get maybe 15 to 16 million for him in January, personally, I'd take it. Yeah. I do think that the decision to bring on Ings is incredibly frustrating, because when you've got someone like Cornet, who are, we apparently by all accounts kept at the club, I just don't really understand why you're not adding the pace into that side. So it is frustrating. In terms of Kudus, I think he's the only one who has an excuse for me, because he is adapting to the league, and coming from an Ajax side where they are dominant. I know this season they're pretty crap, but they're normally dominant and they can control games. He doesn't have to track back as much, but also he plays centrally the majority of the time.
Yeah, it's his best position, isn't it?
Yeah, it is different for him. But I do think that it's a worry that we move him out wide for Bowen to come into the middle, when it was kind of not working against Doku, but it just was dribs and drabs. And I think those substitutions did really hurt us in the end. It's a case of, I think we need a bit of a clear out of a number of players, but also if we've kept this extra squad space for Lingard to come in, and if we get the Lingard that we saw in his loan spell, then feeding from Paqueta, feeding from Kudus and Bowen, you're going to be going, wow, this is a totally different attack. And with someone like Antonio as well, then we're gonna be really difficult to play against. But I just I don't see where the pace is at the moment, apart from Bowen and Antonio, because if you're playing Paqueta wide, which we know he's got the quality to do, he doesn't have the pace. He does have the ability to move the ball and spot those passes, but I think you lose a bit of the combative element of the game that he gives you.
Yeah, I don't think that'll be the long-term plan. I think
No.
Souček coming in was for those types of games. I think we'll see Paqueta go back into the middle, maybe after the Liverpool game. But yeah, it's a game that's frustrating, and also we take the positives from, 10 points from our opening 5 games, considering the fixtures we've had, is pretty good, to be honest. It's probably overachieving what we all expected. So the start's been good. We're in a healthy position. We obviously go into the Europa League on Thursday. Then we go on to Liverpool on Sunday. So positives to take. Hopefully Alvarez is all rested up back in time for the Liverpool game, because my word, do we need him in that midfield going forwards. But Sloth, before we end this, who was your kind of standout man of the match from the game against Man City?
I think for a while it was Alvarez. If he played the whole 90 minutes, I think maybe the result could have been different. I think we may have got a point. However, it's got to be Paqueta. I think he was brilliant. And, we saw bids, a rumoured bid of Newcastle today for £53 million or something. Doesn't even buy you his shin pads at the moment. He's been fantastic for us. So, yeah, I think he again is the man of the match for me.
Yeah, I think I would agree. The one player I did want to mention who I thought was pretty close was Emerson. I thought, they had pretty much nothing down that other side. Foden really nullified. Obviously, Walker didn't do much from an attacking point of view. And, a lot of their threat was from the other side. And a lot of that deserves the credit of both Paqueta and Emerson. And going forwards, Emerson did offer us those little bursts and moments which he does offer. And, it's kind of the opposite of Kufal, who, don't get me wrong, played okay, got a good assist, but he's just not that type of player, and we don't really have that pace. So for me, Emerson was pretty close to Paqueta. I'd maybe push Emerson just because of, just to be different. But yeah, Paqueta deserves man of the match. So yeah, I think that's definitely justified. But yeah, 3-1 loss. We take it on the chin. It's only Anfield next, so we'll bounce back, I'm sure, and get back to winning ways. But yeah, let us know what you thought of the performance, of individual performances, and how your confidence is now with 5 games into the season. Are you a little bit more optimistic for what could be another very memorable campaign with European football? So yeah, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Again, really massively appreciate the support. And yeah, we'll see you on the next video. Sloth, until next time.
Come on, you
Come on,
irons.
you irons.